Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 1977. We're going to be taking a look at Emmylou Harris and she's going to be playing through Tulsa Queen. So let's get Emmylou and the guys up on screen and see how they get on.
Will she come a long, long way? Got a longer way to go. So tell me how a train from Tulsa has got a right to know. Well, she sings a song so sad and high, and the Tulsa Queen don't ever lie, and she don't care where she goes, don't care where she's been. And the Tulsa Queen ain't crying 'cause the won't see you again. Yeah, and I wanna run like a Tulsa Queen, calling out to you like she calls to me. As far away from Tulsa as these 10 wheels can be. Lately I speak.
I'm just going to jump in here as always. The link's going to be in the description below to the original video so you can watch it the whole way through without me interrupting it. But Emmylou Harris had such great talent behind her all the time, hence why they were called the Hot Band, because Albert Lee here on guitar, what a fantastic job he is doing. And I think he actually threw the cameraman off the scent, or at least the director, because the way that he's playing, controlling those bends so well, it does sound like pedal steel guitar that Albert's playing when he's playing that lead. And if you want to see a video on just Albert, that's on this channel somewhere. But we've got Hank DeVito here on pedal steel guitar, just adding such subtle lines in there. They're so cool and synonymous with the country sound, and the way that those two guitars just work together during that solo. It was mostly Albert's guitar that we were hearing, but the way that Hank backed him up with his pedal steel guitar is so cool, so subtle. And this is what you get with a top band, is that they come in for their particular parts within the composition, but they let the track breathe and they're never going to overplay. So that's why this is such a great sound. Obviously the old grey whistle test had great mixing. Generally, it was always a great sound that you'd get, and you'd get that separation. Obviously, if these weren't top players, it would be a little bit messy because everyone would be playing at the same time, whereas we don't get that. And that's the same for the dynamic progression of the track and the journey that we go on. And listen to the way that we start the track, because Emmylou's one of those artists that can play and sing at the same time, and she's using this hybrid picking here, so holding the pick between the thumb and the first finger and using that second finger and third finger to complete the rest of that picking sequence. But having the ability to do that means that we can start so low dynamically. We've also got a little bit of picking in there from Albert on that second guitar, and we've also got rhythm guitar by Rodney Crowell as well. And he co-wrote this song, by the way, with Emmylou, and I know that she did a lot of covers of other people's tracks, but this is a good one to feature because it's a little bit of original material in there as well. But getting into this dynamic change that we have throughout the song, like I said, a really understated start, but then as the track progresses, listen to the subtle way that the other instruments start to get mixed in. They just start to join in, and then we have the backing vocal as well from Rodney, and this is coming in around that second verse time, and we also get the rim shot from the drums, so that's always going to increase that dynamic sound in terms of getting a little bit more aggressive. Obviously, this is one of those tracks that isn't going to get really aggressive in the sound. It's going to be a really subtle change in that dynamic range from starting really low to just getting that really nice full sound, but not overplaying, not overdoing things. And that's something that you can do with great bands that are mixed well, is just listen to each instrument individually and rewind it back to the beginning of the performance and then focus on something else. Listen to that pedal steel guitar just subtly enter the mix and then drift out again, or Albert's lead playing, or the picking that he throws in there just behind Emmylou's picking that she's doing. And Emmylou's voice is obviously going to be the focus of this track because it's mixed so well. It just sits on top there, and the way that she sings, the expression that she's got in her voice, and it just flows through her. There's no strain. It's such an easy vocal to listen to. And with Emmylou's technical ability within her singing, it means that we've got those classic country trills and runs within vocal phrases, but then at the end of the line, she can hold on that vibrato and control it, so she gets every single note to sing, and she can just hold it, and you get the impression she can hold it for as long as she wants to, and it's always going to sound good because of the way that she's controlling her vibrato. And this is something that you'll find with other singers. Sometimes they cut the vocal phrase short with a trill at the end of the line because they might not have control of that vibrato, or it's uncontrollable where it just always happens the same way, and sometimes it will happen really quickly. And especially for a ballad, that's not something that mixes well with a ballad. You tend to have slower vibrato, more expression in there, and that's something that great singers seem to be able to do almost instinctively, is change their expression in their vocal and their control of vibrato to suit the overall composition and what the rest of the band is doing. Because here, pedal steel guitar, we've got a slow vibrato on it, and it's a really subtle detail to look into, but this is why it all works so well together. You've got top players and a top singer that are just blending their sound all the time. And I mentioned in other videos about some artists that get a break very early on in their music careers, and Emmylou wasn't one of those. She went to university to study music, and she dropped out just to follow her dream of becoming a musician. So she moved to New York and became a waitress to pay the bills, but would get out there and play her guitar and perform as much as possible. And when she was 22, she actually got married and had a child, a daughter, and that marriage didn't last very long. She got divorced pretty soon, and at age 24 is when she then got back into performing, and she was performing in a trio when there were members of another band called the Flying Burrito Brothers, and they noticed Emmylou, and through them she then got the connection to Graham Parsons because he was looking for a female vocalist to sing on his first solo album that was to be called GP. And Emmylou would have already been 26 years of age by this time. It was 1973, and she joined up with Graham and the band. They were called the Fallen Angels, and they were touring, and she also worked on an album in 1973 with Graham, and that was called Grievous Angel. Unfortunately, Graham passed away in 1973 due to an accidental overdose of drugs and alcohol. And a couple of years later, when Emmylou was 28 years of age, Mary Martin, who was an A&R representative for Warner Brothers Records, introduced her to Brian Aherne. And Brian produced Emmylou's first major label album, and that was called Pieces of the Sky. So this album was released through Reprise Records, and it was really expensive in terms of the amount of money the record label spent on the album. And that was due to the talent that they had, because they had James Burton in there and Glenn Harden, who's playing in this video, and those two guys played with Elvis Presley. So it just so happened in the future that they dovetailed their tours with Elvis tours, because those two guys were involved playing with Elvis, and then when Elvis wasn't touring, Emmylou would be touring. And the album reached number 7 in the US country charts, and the single If I Could Only Win Your Love got to number 4 in the charts. So for a first effort on a major label, it was a huge success. But let's get back into this performance.
Your name you love each time it comes up in a crowd, and I know it when I do. The Tulsa Queen and you are gone.
What a fantastic live performance. Obviously the control there from Albert with the bends. Like I said, he gets it to sound like that pedal steel guitar because of the control and the descending run that Albert throws in there as well. The fretting is so accurate. There's nowhere to hide with his tone as well. And Albert, just such a top player, but we've got top players across the board here. The subtlety in this performance is so well measured in terms of each instrumentalist and what they add to the track. So you can tell that these guys are a hot band. And talking about the origins of the band name, the record label actually said to Emmylou, if you get a hot band, we will record you. And she'd recorded that album with Reprise Records, which were owned by Warner Brothers. So when Warner Brothers told Emmylou that, she did get together a hot band, and they recorded in 1975 Elite Hotel. That's the name of the album, which went to number 1 in the country charts. So it had a huge impact. And it also won a Grammy the next year in 1976. And James Burton left the band in 1976, and that's when Albert Lee then joined up. And in 1977 is when Emmylou released her album called Luxury Liner, and that was a huge hit. And it went to number 1 in the country charts again, so it meant that Emmylou had 2 consecutive albums that went straight to the top of those country charts. So Emmylou was always getting into that US country charts and always getting into the top 10. In 1975 she was in the top 10 for 2 albums. In 1977 Queen, she was in there 1978, 1979, 1980, 1981, and in 1981 she released 2 albums again, and they both got into the top 10. So an onslaught on the country charts over that whole period. We're talking 6 or 7 years. Emmylou has achieved so much throughout her career, it's going to be impossible for me to mention it all in this video, but in 1980 she did a duet with Roy Orbison, and that was called That Lovin' You Feelin' Again, and they actually won a Grammy for that performance. And in 1985 her album called The Ballad of Sally Rose, that one sticks out because of the writing. Emmylou co-wrote all the tracks on that album, and it was something different because previously she'd done a lot of cover songs, so it just showed that she knew how to write a song, because that album got to number 8 in the country charts. And not to mention the work that she did with Trio. That was a huge album when she worked with Linda Ronstadt and Dolly Parton, because that got to number 1 in the country charts, but it also got into the top 10 of the pop album charts. And also the collaboration that she did with Mark Knopfler, that was all the road running, and they did a tour with that, and I think that got to number 8 here in the UK charts. And her solo album, All I Intended to Be, in 2008 got into the top 5 of the country album charts, and then just 3 years later her album called Hard Bargain, that got to number 3 in the country album charts. And let me just throw in there as well her collaboration album Old Yellow Moon, that was with Rodney Crowell, who was in this video. That got to number 4 in the charts. And then, just as a final passing statement, The Travelling Kind was another collaboration album with Rodney, and that got to number 8 in the charts. And in terms of when we're talking, that was 2015. So just crazy consistency from Emmylou throughout her career. How successful she's been in the country album charts. Just massive successes. But thank you so much for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!